Hey everybody, it's the Trout, and hope you're having a great day, and welcome to the Trout Show. Today's episode stars a very talented musician, originally from the UK, who makes her home now in America. And she was discovered at the ripe old age of 15 by Dave Stewart. Now, if you're not familiar with Dave Stewart is, he was part of the Eurythmics, but he's also very well known for producing some very talented musicians, like our guest today, Joanne Shaw Taylor. Joanne started playing and liking Stevie Ray and really got into the blues. That's what she wanted to play, and she continues to do that now with her band as she tours across the United States and to Europe. But it's not just a blues artist or blues guitarist. She also writes some poppy kind of stuff too that she likes, but she's helped along by people like Joe Bonamassa. She's played and opened up for people with Stevie and Jeff Beck, some very well-known musicians. And the reason why is because she's very talented. And I think you'll like her music, but I think you'll like her story because she has some funny things to talk about that. So that's up next, Joanne Shaw Taylor. But before we get to her, remember, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you like this channel, subscribe. And remember, this is also available on podcasts everywhere you can find a podcast. So up next, the gal that studied Stevie Ray and now plays like Stevie Ray, only better, Joanne Shaw Taylor. That's next on The Trout Show. Kind of discovered when you were, how old were you? Like 12 or something like that?
When I met Dave Stewart, I was 15.
Okay, you're 15. So did you realize, and this is something that I've always kind of intrigued me, so did you realize at 15 that you had the skill that you had? Or you just kind of said, were you kind of shocked? In other words, you're out playing. I don't know the circumstances, but it's been a while back. But you were playing and Stewart goes, I think I want to help you. Did it dawn on you at that point that you said, man, I must be good? Or how did it come about with your mind to go wrap yourself around that?
I don't remember ever, which sounds a little obnoxious, but I don't remember having that sort of pinch of ego that you.
No, and I'm not saying you did. I mean, you're just kind of playing.
No, yeah. No. But no, I don't think it ever really occurred to me. It never occurred to me that I couldn't do it and that I wasn't capable of learning how to play guitar and learn it well, but it never. I don't think it ever really occurred to me that I was better than anybody else, and I still don't think I am. I think it's always been for me just thankful that I found this means of expressing myself. I knew that was gonna be very therapeutic in life, and a giant benefit, but also open up my world. I grew up in a very small English village. Wasn't particularly. It was very white Church of England school. There wasn't a great mix of cultures.
What part of the country did you grow up in?
I grew up in a village called Cheswick Green, which is
close to
Solihull. So it's Stratford-upon-Avon, Birmingham.
Okay, I hope that. Okay, all right. Okay.
But lots of farmland, and the village, and everyone who lived in the village went to the school. So we were all its own little world. So I knew it would open up my world in terms of meeting lots of different people and travel. So I think I was more sort of focused on that than I don't think I ever thought I was good. I think I always, when even like Dave, I kind of thought probably an idiot, to think that I'm good, but I'll go with it,
Well, I assume you knew who he was when you saw him, did you?
I
you
didn't.
That's
I was in my bedroom, and so we'd done a charity gig in aid of breast cancer, because my mum had just been receiving treatment for it at the time, and a friend of Dave was there and passed on a little demo CD I'd done to him. So we phoned the house the next day, and my dad burst into my bedroom. I remember I was watching a Stevie Ray Vaughan DVD and jamming along. He's like, oh my God, Dave Stewart's on the phone. I'm like, I don't know who that is. He's like, Eurythmics. And I'm like, I don't know who that
Of course,
is.
your dad knew who he was, but you
Yeah,
didn't.
my dad was a massive fan. He's like, Annie Lennox. I'm like, sounds familiar. Like, and he's like, anyway, he wants you to go to London tomorrow. We're going to London and he wants to sign you to a record deal. I was like, cool, can I get on with my video? Just usual kind of, well, they seem happy. So,
But you know what? Here's the thing. This has happened to me. When you get up my age group and you start talking to people, this is a few years ago. So I was at a college. I'm 10 minutes away from one of the biggest universities in Texas. Okay, it's a liberal arts. People, very famous people, have gone to school there. You know, the guy from Eagles, Paul Schaefer, that played with Letterman, all those guys. They all went there. So I went up and watched a band. This has been a few years ago. And I walked up to the guy that was playing the band. I said, "You sound a lot like, oh my gosh, now that the lead guitar, I can't remember his name now. The lead guitar player from Queen. I can see him.
Brian May.
Brian May." I said, "You listen," and he goes, "Who's that?" And I'm like, "You don't know who Brian May, Queen?" I got a clue. So it's kind of the same.
Singing Bohemian Rhapsody.
So no, I didn't go into that. So it's the same thing with you. Yeah, I just kind of walked away and went, okay.
Well, in my defense, I was 15 years old. And
I mean, yeah, he was in college, but still. So, all right. So from there, was that when the ball started rolling for you? Was you that young when you go and was it
pretty
kind
much?
of, okay.
It was looking back, the ball started rolling, and I thought it was going in that direction. And then after about 3 years, the ball abruptly stopped, which I think was the best thing that ever happened to me. So the label went bust before I could release any material, and I sort of retreated back to my parents' house and got a part-time job in a pub. I mean, my parents were fantastic. They were always very, very supportive. So it was the deal was, look, we're not going to charge you rent. You know, if you get a job that's enough to pay for your car insurance and your phone and pocket money, we'll let you live here for free and you can spend the weekdays working on your music. And that took about another 4 years of kind of learning to write songs and gigging and getting a good band together. And then I reached out to Thomas Roof and signed. So it was, the ball got rolling and I had this sort of amazing experience of opening up for B.B. King and being on the road with Dave and tour buses and going to every European city you can think of and art galleries. And then all of a sudden I was in a village in Northamptonshire, not doing anything and having no money. And any money I could scrounge, it was.
And you're telling him, "Hey, guess who I just played with?" And they went, "Yeah, but you're here now." It's
which was great. It was really humbling, and it really, changed my work ethic. I think, understanding how hard this industry is and how persevering you have to be. And getting in a Mini with three, which I don't know, you're American if you remember the old Minis with a Fender Bassman on the side seat with a duvet wrapped around it and driving 10 hours to Glasgow because your car only goes 40 miles an hour.
Yes.
And doing a gig and driving back home. It was good. I wouldn't want to do it again, but I'm glad I did.
No, but but the thing about it is, and a lot of people don't understand this because the way the world is on the internet now, you can put something on YouTube and go viral.
Yeah.
And everybody goes, "Oh, look, hey," and you don't pay that dues.
Yeah, I mean, this was pre-MySpace, certainly pre-Facebook.
And the thing about it was I wouldn't do it. I mean, I've been playing guitar for 50 years. And I had an opportunity when I was 20 years old to go and meet with some very famous people. And my brother talked me into going to university, and I said, okay. Well, and then I got married, blah, blah, blah. But I never wanted to be these guys that you just got through saying, get in a van or a Mini or something with 3 other people or 4 other people, travel from town to town, getting in a room and maybe eating peanut butter and jelly or whatever it is just for the next gig and pray to God that something happens. And therefore, I never got where I wanted to go. And so now, fast forward to now, I am now interviewing people like you that I can talk about it and say, okay, but you paid your dues, but I know I get to watch all you people.
You're smart. You went for a proper job and didn't spend.
Well, I did, but still, but I went to corporate America, but I still am a player and I still record and produce, blah, blah, blah. So, but the thing about it is, and you got to saying this, I think for me, when it comes to people like you that's on tour all the time, Walter Trout's a prime example. Okay, goes between here and then he goes to, Europe. He goes on tour, which you're going on in about a month. I notice I always look at people's tour dates. You get a little break, and then you go to St. Louis after today, and then you're going home.
I
And then
am.
you go to Europe. It's not a life for everybody.
No.
And I think the other thing too is when you're as good as you are, Joanne, and people expect you
Mm.
every night when you walk on stage to be the best you can, which not necessarily you're not going to be, but you're human.
Yeah.
And there are dates you don't feel good and all that stuff. So I always admire people like yourself that are on the road all the time, that continually, and like you said, I don't know where I am. I know where I am, but I don't know what date it is.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. What motivates you still? You've been on tour now for years.
Mm.
What keeps you going? And I know, you get paid to do it, and young people think, oh, it's great. I'll get in front of 20,000 people, or that when your gigs might be 1,000 or 2,000, whatever you're playing in. What keeps you motivated? What keeps you pushing down the road?
Well, I think two things I'll say to that, which is one, just picking up on your previous point about, you know, being able to perform, to the standards you want to perform. Because I do like to say to younger artists, because there was a time for, 15 years where I felt like I had to do everything. I was already tour managing and driving the van some of the time and
Mhm.
loading the gear. And then it's not just the show, it's the meet and greet afterwards and signing all the CDs. And
It's
that's
a
how you
lot of
want
work. It's
it.
work.
It is. And it's also, if you've got 30 gigs to get through, the best way of catching a cold, which means you're not singing,
Yeah,
is by going and shaking a lot of hands and being
sure
around
it
a lot of
is.
people.
Yeah.
And it's great if you can do it when you're building your audience, but I always like to tell younger artists, particularly females, because I think as a female in a male-dominated industry, there's still that thing of you're seen as being a diva if you're just putting your foot down. But look after yourself. At the end of the day, your job is to perform your art and entertain people and give them something, some happiness or energy or whatever you feel it is. So if you can't do that and do the meet and greets and do the interviews, then don't do them. It's, put your foot
Just
down.
just walk off the stage and be done with it, I guess, to a certain
Yeah,
degree.
go and have a shower, do your yoga, do
Yeah.
your vocal cool down, talk to your partner, whatever it is that's your job. You got to look after yourself. And no one's going to look after you in this
No.
business. One's going to
No.
keep asking you for more and more. So,
Yeah.
but in terms of what motivates me, I think it's always been the same thing. I've never felt competition with other guitar players. I know coming up, the boys are very competitive with each other. My main thing was always trying to figure out how I can be the best person I can be, best person, best musician, best partner, best, daughter. I have control over that. I don't have a control over how successful anyone else is. So I
No.
think it's also being on that journey of I like the fact that my albums change. When I look back at my albums, they all sound like Joanne Shaw Taylor, but they do sound like 22-year-old Joanne and 38-year-old Joanne, you know. So I think it's about the journey as much as anything for me of it's kind of documenting my life, I suppose, when I look
But
back
there's
of
no destination. When you think
yeah.
about it, there is no destination.
No,
I
and I don't know
mean,
where I'm going to
when
go musically. Maybe I'll decide to do an acid jazz album one day. I'm sure I
well,
won't.
and the thing about it is what you do as a blues person myself is you got to do more than 1-4-5. I mean,
Yeah, blues is such
there's a lot in that, which is why I play it.
yeah. I
But
mean, I always say that I'm a blues guitarist, but not a blues artist. Which I think stems from the fact that, growing up, all my influences were male guitar players,
sure.
and the guitar is a gender neutral instrument. I can, try and sound like Stevie or Albert, but when it came to singing, I couldn't sound like that. So I had to go find other influences, and predominantly females were in different genres, soul and pop and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, and sort of classic rock, Stevie Nicks, etc. So I really had to kind of adapt from blues to be able to figure out how to sing and write
But
songs.
you have that, you're lucky though, in the aspect that your voice kind of fits into that. You have a deeper voice. You're an
Mhm.
alto, I guess you'd get considered an alto singer, I guess.
Yeah,
And when you're singing, you're not, if you're singing like some of the Steve, well, of course, Stevie Nicks got that different voice too. But when you're doing pop singing, it's higher because of the female register. But you've got more of that thing that you can do because it's just natural for you. That's just your voice.
I'm more on the Adele spectrum than I
There you
am
go.
the Mariah Carey.
Good person to
Thank
compare
God.
yourself to. Well, and and so that, if you keep motivating, I think that's the thing when you think about it. We were just talking about Jeff Beck, but the destination is Jeff Beck. I mean, in other words, that's it. When you're done, you're done. And then hopefully you get to meet Jimmy in person somewhere
Yeah.
above or Jeff and go, hey, remember me?
Yeah.
So, but the thing about it too, for me, is when people like you perform, then you've got the other thing to go with it. Like you just said at the beginning before we started recording, you're constantly working on new stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my fears, and it's got to be worse for somebody like you, that one day that creative thing's going away. I mean, you can sit down and write a song, but can you write a song?
Yeah. I mean, I always take a little break after writing. I always say writing's like turning on a tap. You got to wait for the water to get warm, and then eventually the water tank's going to run out of water and it goes cold again.
Yep.
Maybe your first idea is, it's like, oh my God, that's just a copy of another song I did 10 years ago, but worse.
Yeah.
So you always have those anxieties. And for COVID, for instance, I couldn't find anything to write about during COVID, which is why I did the blues album, did a covers album. So yeah, it's a worry, but when it runs out, and I don't know, I'll go foster some puppies or do something.
Well, but
volunteer at a homeless shelter or something.
The other thing though is, and this is what I've seen a trend now more, I think, is the meet and greet.
Mm-hmm.
And people saying, well, I love you, or I think your music's great. That just fills your tank up every time, I would imagine, when you're going out and shaking hands.
I love meeting people. I genuinely do, which, if anyone's been following my career for a long time, I think they'll know that I wasn't particularly very good at meeting people in the early days. And looking back, I think it was a bit of a combination of, I was so young and the fan base was predominantly men, much older than me. And, if you're thinking like you're a 13-year-old girl, all the guys I'd met were like either family figures, uncles, dads, or authority figures like school teachers.
Right.
So to have like these guys coming up to you wanting to talk to you and shake your hand, and it was a bit kind of, the walls went up a little bit.
Sure.
And then I kind of got used to that, I suppose. And then COVID did me the world of good because I just sort of rested for 2 years and, was pretty burned out. So I came back with a lot more enthusiasm. And also I'm older now. So if anything creepy happens, I'll just tell them they're creepy. So, whereas when you're a 24-year-old girl, it's like, oh, okay.
Everybody's creepy when you're 24 years old. Now,
Pretty
when you're
much.
older, it's when you get my age, people don't care. In other words, there's a time when you get, whether I don't know about the
I hit
female
that at
side of it.
35. It's not.
Yeah, they just kind of like, and I'm not talking about that part, but it's just like, oh, he's not going to hurt anything. If he wants to come back in the back behind stage, let him, because what is he going to do? Come on, he's not going to be bothering anybody. And so that's I just think that when you do what you do and you do it all the time, it's work. And when I talk to young people, I always tell them the same thing. It's the business of music, and there's just so many ways.
There's so many other, I mean, my grandparents were coal miners. That's a job.
Wow.
I go talk to people and shake hands with people who already like me before they meet me, so
that's pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
They don't know who you are, but that's and that's the one thing I've always said to myself when I meet famous people is sometimes I don't want to meet them because then you find out what they're like. And if I had a chance, if I'd met Jeff or even somebody like Pete Townsend, Eric Clapton, people I've been looking at for years, I just walk up and say, hey, appreciate your music. What else you going to say? Because it's like, because if you ever start having talking with, you might go, I don't like that person. I wish I'd never visited with them. But
that's always the risk, particularly with social media, trying to get your personality across, which for me is a very British sense of humor, which can go one way or the other with Americans sometimes.
Yeah.
Particularly with like religion in this country. It's like, dude, you got to go watch Monty Python films and then you might understand where I'm coming from. But
I was just telling, so was I talking about that the other day? A young person, I think it was like my granddaughter about Monty Python or somebody young. And I said, you need to go watch Monty Python. And I was quoting from one of the movies. I don't remember which one it was.
Yeah, we watched Holy
I think it was the
Cloud.
meaning. I think it was the meaning. I know it was one of the skits I remember seeing. I go in there like, "Who's Monty Python?" I said, "Never mind. You don't need." All right. So, question number two is, well, I got more than one question, but I mean, why did you decide? I got nothing against this city, but what attracted you to Detroit?
It was just fate, really. I'd always wanted to tour the States. I'd always wanted to live here. Which I think is down to two things. One, all my influences were American.
Yeah.
You know, you were saying about you got into the blues through the Stones, and I think there was that exchange of
Yeah.
Americans getting into the Stones and Zeppelin and, you know, John Mayall, and then us Brits getting into, you know, the Texas stuff and Chicago. So I'd always wanted to live here for that reason. And the other reason being I was from a country that's, you know, this big and surrounded by water. So it's, you
Oh,
grow up feeling very isolated,
yeah.
or I did. So the idea that there was this massive landmass that you could traverse without having to go through borders, you know, unlike mainland Europe,
Mm-hmm.
just sounded wonderful, particularly for touring. So I was doing a gig in England, in Worcester, and I had a support band, and they were from Detroit. And we got talking, we kept in touch. And eventually I'd done White Sugar about the following year on Roof. I said, look, Thomas Roof doesn't tour European artists in America. It's too expensive. But
Mm-hmm.
I've saved up some money. I'm going to try and get the visa. If I book some gigs, you know, and route it out of Detroit, can you help me with, you know, a van and a rehearsal space and backline? And would you be the
Sure.
band?
Yeah.
So we did, and I managed to get the visa in 2 weeks worth of gigs. And then we got an agent off the back of that, which booked another 6 week tour with Eric Sardinas. So we routed it again out of Detroit. And so I
So
just
you
kept
just
going.
stayed there. That
Yeah.
became
And
your,
then, you
yeah.
know, I mean, I was like 22. So all my friends had gone to university. One was in Australia, one was in Barcelona, you know.
The rest, yeah.
It was like, you know, there's nothing really for me in the UK. And by the time, you know, I got based in America and came back, those friends had now had children and got married.
Yeah.
And so it's, you
You're the oddman person that's like, she's a musician.
yeah.
I
I
want to
mean,
meet
I
my
started when
family. Here's my kids. What do you do
yeah.
for a living? I'm a chartered accountant every day. I go,
Yeah, I've got like 10 honorary nieces and nephews at this point.
So,
And I love them all, but they know Auntie JoJo's on tour.
when did you decide? Because I watched some of your videos. Obviously, I try to watch everybody before I interview them because I'm a I'm a Les Paul guy,
Okay.
but I do have some Strat stuff when I want single coil stuff when I record.
Hmm.
You play a Telly a lot, but I
Hmm.
noticed it has humbuckers in it.
It does, but I never use them. I only
So
ever use
you
bridge
use the
pickup.
one by the bridge? Is that you use the standard, the
Every
stock?
On every guitar I ever play, it's always in the bridge position, and I never change it. Never touch the volume, never touch the tone, never touch the pickup.
So and what was it about the Telly that you like about it?
It was intentional, to be honest. My first guitar was a Strat.
Hmm.
You know, I was the kid that was obsessed with Stevie.
Yeah, sure.
And also, I think as a lot of blues guitarists of my generation will attest to, that was a big, you know, Stevie freak, you know.
Yeah, you got to have
Tried
Strat.
not to sound like him too much, even though he's a massive influence. So it was Albert Collins, really. I gravitated that, and Johnny Lang actually had just come
Oh,
out, which was a
Johnny.
great influence for me because it was so nice to see someone nearly my age out there touring and doing it, you know. So between the two of them, I just thought, one, I sound less like Stevie when I'm on a telly.
Right.
Um, and B, yeah, I just kind of fell in love with it because of Albert and Johnny.
Do you push it much? Do you use I'm not a real big pedal person that much. Do you use that many stuff on the floor?
I got one tube screamer and a reverb pedal.
That's it?
I maybe I always say this, maybe it's a female thing, but I just there's so much going on up there between the sound and organizing the band and thinking about where we're at in the set and what's coming up next and what I'm switching to, and is that audience member okay? They look like they're passed out. Do I need to call a show stop? That why do I want to have to worry about pushing buttons? It's I got
That
enough.
I've
I'm
never heard it described that way, but that's
and I'm
interesting.
a woman, so I'm doing it in a heel. It's like really, I want to make my life more complicated. It's
But
fine.
blues players are not known to put a bunch of crap on there anyway. I
No,
mean,
and you know what? It's just that I don't need. something else to be wasting my money on. You
No.
know,
And
I don't
what do you use typically? What's your amps that you use it push it out
I
of?
got a 61 Fender Bassman and a 62 Fender Bassman piggyback.
Yeah.
So
And so and do you this is just for my edification anyway. What size strings do you use?
I use the Ernie Ball, so they're skinny top, heavy bottom, so they're tens on the
Okay.
bottom and
Okay.
11s on the top. I tried to do the thing of 11s and 12s when I was younger, and it's this
No.
this is not powerlifting anything. Without chipolata.
Well, I play nines because I just got, it's easier for me because I do a lot of bending. And of course, when you're playing a Les Paul, that's all about this massive piece of wood that you run through it and want to hit and sustain.
Yeah.
And I do a lot. My wife always watches me. Other goes, your hand doesn't stop. And I go, yeah, I'm always doing. I don't want it. You know how that goes. And then occasionally though, don't you throw do you carry a Les Paul with you too, or is it
I do,
mostly?
yeah. I switched to a Les Paul, I think it was like 2012, and I did the Almost Always Never album. I felt like my playing had got stagnant, so I kind of mixed it up and changed picks. I went to the little Jazz threes
Oh, the
and
small
started
ones, yeah,
playing, yeah, and started playing a Les Paul just to kind of find, refresh.
yeah, yep.
Um, which did my playing a lot of good. I tidied up my right hand. It was a bit sloppy before that. And yeah, just and then shortly after that, I did that for a couple of years, and then telly suits me a lot better. But sometimes you just need a guitar that sounds like a Les Paul, you know.
Well, I understand that. But occasionally, I like the whammy bar just to drop down, just to give it a little step. But no Eddie Van Halen stuff for me because I never could figure that out too. And all that tapping stuff, I can do it,
Yeah,
but
no,
it's like
that's above my
I,
pay grade.
yeah, it's like I suck at it. I can't. I just why turn it up to 11 and blow it out or whatever. And the thing about blues is most of the people that play blues the people I grew up watching, they didn't, PB King, Buddy Guy's on tour.
Mm.
I think he's maybe he may use a compressor or distortion or something like that, but he didn't do anything, In
No.
fact, his stuff is pretty thin when he plays because he
Yeah,
plays on that Strat and I think he plays the bridge pickup all the time.
yeah,
And
it's quite classy tone, isn't it?
and I think the other thing about you though, you've been fortunate to be able to work some very well-known artists. I mean
Yeah.
but that and I tell those people all the time when you're of your quality, it's not because you suck, it's because you're really good at what you do. I mean, seriously.
Yeah. Well, I don't thank you. I mean, again, for any young guys listening, it's one of two things. One, I suppose I'm good at what I do. It pains me to say it. I'm British.
Oh, quit! I know you're British. Come on, at least you're not Canadian. Come on.
Yeah, that's I've got a Canadian keyboard player, and I never stop referring to him as the Canadian. Um, and then the other thing is, I'm a nice person. I'm professional. I'm easy to work
You're
with.
British. Come on, you just got through saying that you're British. Come on.
But
What else is
it
there?
makes a big difference. The amount of kids that, coming up that are just so full of ego and such a nightmare. And guess who gets you got to hire a support slot. Your name's Joe Bonamassa and you need to support. Who's he going to hire? Me, because I'm going to turn up and be professional. All my guys are great. He knows I'm going to respect the stage times. Job done.
You are who you are.
Yeah, and
And
I've always tried to stress that particularly because often I get compared to other female artists. Sometimes in a positive way, like, oh, if you like Joanne, you'll like Sam Fish. And sometimes in a negative way, people who love Sam don't like me because they think I'm competing with her. Firstly, me and Sam's one of my best friends, adore her. I'm just glad there's another girl out there that understands my life, to be honest, Um,
have you met our Texas gal, Allie Venable, yet?
yeah, we did actually me and Sam did a few dates with her on the Devon Ormond tour. She's a sweetheart,
I
really,
haven't met
really
her yet, but I know she's
nice
close
girl.
to me. Yeah. And
Um, but yeah, it's that thing of particularly women, men competing women against each other. And it's like, this is the one thing that we're not competitive in. Just because you buy a Sam Fish album doesn't mean you can't buy a Joanne Shaw Taylor one. And
yeah,
the only time that we're ever in competition would be if we're in the same town on the same night with the
playing at
same
different gigs.
price. Yeah.
Yeah, then you're competing.
But even then, you'll probably just go, well, I'll go see Sam this time and I'll see Joanne next time. It's so yeah, it's not. No one ever buys a Led Zeppelin album and refuses to listen to Rolling Stones because they've bought a Led Zeppelin album, sort of
But I'm
stuff.
going to tell you something, Joy, and you know this. Americans just love a British accent. They go gaga over it.
It's the only reason I'm having the minimal success I'm having here.
Oh, come on.
I'm exotic.
No, you're not. Come on. I mean, it
I'm
came with me with the Beatles.
yeah. Yeah.
You know, my aunt was my aunt was from lived in Denver, which is where you were yesterday,
Mhm.
and she was a World War II bride. My
Oh, okay.
uncle went over and married her over there and brought her over, and so I was kind of used to it. And then when he started hearing the Beatles and they're singing, and all of a sudden, "Hello, Paul," and you're like, what's that?"
Yeah. You're like the green one.
Where did that come from? How come their voice doesn't? Why does it change like that?
This is nothing to do with music, but you've just reminded me. My nanny Vera, my grandmother, my paternal grandmother.
Yeah.
If you asked her about World War II, she'd just say, "Oh God, it was the best time of my life." Like, yeah. She's like, "Oh, I had a job. I was working on building tanks in a factory. I was
Oh
thin,
yeah. Yeah.
rationing. Your granddad had buggered off, and there was an abundance of young American sailors." She said it was the best time of my life. Like, all right,
Isn't
thanks,
that
Dad.
funny though? So you moved over. You've been over here in America for quite some time.
Yeah, 2009. So be 14
Oh
years this
yeah.
time. So
And
longer than I've lived anywhere, to be honest.
yeah, that's true. And then it's funny. I was going to ask you at the beginning, but excuse me, but I figured I didn't need to ask after your dad said something because I kind of envision you living in this small community in the UK.
Hmm.
Here's did they have your nickname? Did they call you Joannie or did they call you did you have
Uh,
a nickname?
Jojo.
Jojo. So Jojo's in her bedroom listening to Stevie Ray Vaughan, and all your friends are listening to what were they listening to back then? I was trying to think what they
I don't
probably
really remember them listening
80s
to.
stuff.
I remember they got excited because we went to see the Backstreet Boys.
Oh yeah, that was that time.
Um,
Yeah, yeah.
but my friends were great actually, and it's the two friends mentioned earlier. The one who went to Barcelona, and the one still in Australia. So Helen and Liz. Helen and Liz would both. I would always listen to. So we have to wear school uniforms, blazers. So I'd have
Yeah.
my headphones through the sleeve or like up the back, and then put my hair over it so you
Yeah,
can
so they
see
couldn't
what
see
I'm
it.
listening to blues and making notes. And they'd always cover for me, like if they knew the teacher was about to ask a question, and they'd just write it down and give me the answer. I go, Taylor, you listening? What's the capital of
Oh, those are good
Harriet
friends you
Sophia?
got. Those are
Yeah.
good friends.
But they'd come to gigs with me too. And Liz now has two little ones, Artie and Edith, and they know Auntie Jojo plays the tar, as they call it, and they see my videos on YouTube and stuff. So
Well, and I mean, what I was going to ask, and then you mentioned your dad came in and said, "Dave Stewart's on the phone." I already knew he liked what you did because he was a
yeah, he played guitar and harmonica too. Like yourself, he was sensible when he got a proper job and managed to raise a family.
So you take how long you take a break for how many weeks before you go to Europe? You like
Well, depends what you mean by break. The
well,
day
you
I get
still got to
home,
work. You got to get ready to go,
well,
obviously.
also the day I get home, I'm going to pick up my new dog, so which is a puppy.
Ooh. What kind of dog you getting?
I'm getting a miniature dachshund.
Okay.
If it was up to me, I'd go to the nearest pound
Found.
and get whatever old thing needs a good home. But unfortunately, I've always wanted to do that, but I put off having a dog because obviously I need something small enough to travel with. And then I finally
I was going to
thought,
say you're taking the dog with you.
yeah. So I
Is it a
kind of
puppy or is it a
puppy,
puppy?
12 weeks. So I'm gonna have some sleepless nights ahead of me. And then I'm doing a new album. So yeah, and I think my fan base, I've always been very clear of like, look, I'm always going to record what I want to record because the alternative is recording what I think people want me to record, and then
And
I'm
when
just chasing something fake that, I got to play what I feel, and I can't make you feel something if I don't feel it, you
no.
know.
Have a
And then
great show tonight, Joanne. Thank you very much.
excellent.
Take care.
Lovely to
See you.
talk to you and be well.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye.